Welcome back, guys, to Phoenix Wright! Justice for all, where we're on the track. Proving Acro guilty. Let's continue on with our testimony, as we more or less said that Money the Monkey was a possible unwilling accomplice by having things in the wrong place at the right time, by the sound of it. It's possible, says Phoenix, as we talk about the Max G bust. Maybe Acro saw Money's mountain of stolen goods and thought to use one of them. Seems we're on track, doesn't it? Anyways, I think we've more than proven one critical fact. Namely, that it was entirely possible that Acro was the murderer. Moron! Why are we getting moron for that? Seems like we are well on track. Mr. Wright's argument was so circular I'm still a bit dizzy. However, his argument does hold water. There's no denying that. Ow! I don't seem so flamboozled, especially by this fraud of an attorney. Fraud? You've forgotten the absolute most important thing, Mr. Phoenix Wright. And what is that? You should know. Evidence. You forgot that your fraud of a magical client was spotted at the scene of the crime. Well, no. There is no reason to doubt the clown's testimony. That's true. How do you respond to that, Mr. Wright? Nick, don't let it beat you now. We continue down the rabbit hole. I won't. This is my chance to turn this trial around. When the murder occurred, there were two people at the scene of the crime. One was the victim, Russell Berry, and the other was the murderer himself. Answer this and only this, Mr. Phoenix Wright. Who was the murderer the clown saw? Well, we kind of answered that with our last bit of testimony, didn't we? Take that! He saw Max's... Ow! I asked who was the other person Mo saw on the scene. That evidence has nothing to do with the question. Objection! Au contraire, mon frère. It does indeed have something to do with the question. Mo said that he saw Max's silhouette. But he did not actually see the man himself. It wasn't a human being he saw. How is that possible? It's simple, really. What Mo actually saw that night was Max's bust. Objection! What are you talking about? Have you tried using your brain at all in this case? The silhouette he saw was wearing a cloak. Objection! There's no reason why you couldn't attach a cloak to the bust. It would be easy to hang one off of the cards in the bust's hands. Idiot! Who in their right mind would put a cloak on a bust? It doesn't matter who put it on the bust. Just wait a minute now, Mr. Wright. Who put the cloak on the bust? That question is of the utmost importance to this case, don't you agree? Oh, he caught me. So let's have it, Mr. Wright. Who put the cloak on the bust? Well, if I had to say, it was incidental. Coincidental, it just happened. But it came off of him. Fool! Him? You are saying it was the victim himself, Russell Berry? That's what I'm saying. The victim himself placed the cloak on the bust? Placed the cloak isn't really the right way of putting it. Then what would be the right way of putting it, Mr. Wright? Explain yourself. Nick, do you really have a handle on all of this? I'm fine, Mayor. I'm finally putting all the pieces together. There's really only one picture I can paint anyways. Alright. So you want to know what really happened that night? Let's step back in time. Acro used a rope to lower the wooden box onto the scene. Then he attached that rope to the bust and dangled the bust out of his bedroom window, directly above the wooden box. At the same time, the ringmaster told Max to wait in his room and went to the scene. Of course, at the time, the ringmaster was wearing Max's costume. Perhaps he didn't want anyone to recognize him that night. But just as he feared, he was spotted at the entrance of the lodging house by none other than a ventriloquist and his puppet, Ben and Trilo. When the ringmaster arrived at the scene, he bent over to lift the wooden box. And that's when Acro took his chance and released the rope. Now this is when the magic happens. At the very instant the bust hit the victim, you wait just a second there, Mr. Phoenix Wright. As much as you try, as much as you scheme, this just isn't true. It can't be. It's still a little early to be getting so upset, Miss Von Karma. This circus isn't over yet. What? The impact of the bust on the victim threw the cloak up, which snagged onto the bust. That impact also caused the sound a certain witness heard, prompting him to take a look. That witness was, of course, Lawrence Moe Curls, the clown. When Moe looked out his window, the cloak had already snagged onto the bust. Now, having completed the crime, Acro naturally went about pulling up the murder weapon. Of course, he had no idea that Moe saw the bust being raised with the cloak dangling on it. Primarily because, in his wheelchair, he couldn't see out of his window. So he just kept pulling the bust up. And that is how the magical murderer, disappearing into the sky, came to be. So you see, the only person who could have pulled this off is the one person who was able to drop the murder weapon from above the crime scene. Acro, it could only have been you. Still seems fine. Acro's been playing mind games with all of us. He sure has. But he has come to the end of his rope now. So, what now? You grace us with a rather long-winded tale. But do you have any evidence to prove that your fairy tale is true?
Evidence?
In this court, only two things matter. The power of evidence and the power of my whip.
Don't forget the power of my gavel as well. Mr. Wright, the prosecution brings up a good point. Can we see some evidence?
Nick, they say they want evidence. I just explained how there can only be one possible murder method. But there is still something unusual about Moe's eyewitness account. Unusual? A contradiction, actually. Okay then, use that and get out of this jam.
That's enough talking amongst yourselves. Proceed, Mr. Wright. Present some evidence to the court that backs your claims. I want hard proof that you have unraveled the trick to this magic case.
Well, I don't have the case. Oh. Well, let's use this then. Made to order hat that is a symbol of Max's fabulousness found at the crime scene. It's not necessarily that, so to say, but it's about his symbols in terms of contradiction between testimonies, where other testimonies declared there was multiple symbols and some only declared there was two. Let's present that. Is that right? It's symbols, isn't it? Because that's the difference in testimony, because it brought up again Trilo and Ben a second ago, having seen him, and they saw all three symbols. Mo only saw two. That's the contradiction between testimonies, isn't it? Just go for it. It's not that much health lost. The problem is Max's three symbols. You know, the silk hat, the cloak, and the white roses.
Those symbols were a problem numerous times during yesterday's proceedings.
Yesterday, there were two contradictions in Mo's testimony. The silk hat was one, the white roses were the other. The theory I just presented explains all of these contradictions. You fool! Do you ever shut up? Max's silk hat was found at the scene of the crime. However, remember what Mo said yesterday. He testified that the criminal he saw fleeing the scene was wearing a silk hat. There's only one explanation for that. The silk hat that Mo saw was actually the bust's. That's not all.
Makes sense if you look at it that way, then he did see the silk hat. Well, sort of.
Objection!
Fine, you've got one. What about the other contradiction?
The other contradiction?
Remember what that ventriloquist said in court? He said that he witnessed white roses on Max's chest that night. The clown's testimony doesn't match. The clown said that there were no white roses. I see you trying to explain that one away. Can you do it, Nick? Of course. I can explain all of it. What was that? Please recall the instant when the cloak snagged onto the bust. If the cloak snagged onto the bust, what happened to the white roses? They'd naturally fall in the spots between his arms and be covered. Did you get it yet? The cloak got snagged onto the front of the bust. It means that the white roses would end up on the back of the bust. Ah! Which explains why Mo didn't see them. The white roses were not visible because they were on the back side of the bust. Looked like the front side to me.
Order! Order!
Well, at least we knew that was the contradiction. But, yeah.
This is quite the shocking state of affairs. Miss Wright's theory still sounds a bit absurd to me. However, let's just keep going down this road for a while and see where it leads.
Let's do this, Nick. And maybe Von Karma will finally throw in the towel. No. No. Well, so much for that theory.
Mr. Wright, do you mind?
What is it? You took the time to research our circus, didn't you? Well, yes, I did. Is there something making you think that I didn't? Oh, I wonder.
If you did, then maybe you'll understand why I think you're off track.
Why is that? Motive. This witness feels an incredible debt of gratitude toward the ringmaster. Anyone with any relation to the circus is well aware of this. Yes, but it wasn't the real victim, was it? Thus, there is absolutely no way someone like this would kill the ringmaster. Intended target. Your Honor, I'd like to hear Acro's story. Learn about his relationship with the ringmaster and his life up until now. What do we do? There's no doubt in that Acro deeply respected the ringmaster. Acro's motive.
It seems that this case isn't over yet. Very well. However, I feel this is a good place to take a break. I will listen to the rest of Mr. Dingley's testimony after recess. This court will now take a 10-minute recess.
I bet you're always wondering at this point, will he take a day recess? It probably would make the videos neater for the next chapter, because we're spiraling towards the end. December 30th, 2:17 p.m. I can't believe it! Acro? It's pretty shocking, isn't it? It definitely is! And to think he was always the most straightforward of the group! Jeebus, am I that hated? Acro tried to pin the murder on you on purpose. He did? But I'm nothing but a little old nobody, you know? But you're not, which is kind of the reason why...
Hey, pal, is it Gumshoe? You're gonna ignore me after I went to all this trouble to bring you some evidence?
Ah, Detective Gumshoe.
Forget it. I'm going home. This guy deserves to be guilty anyways.
Now, Detective, I'm sorry. Look, why don't you relax a little? Got some really tasty milk. How about a card trick, Detective?
Ha! Well, if you insist.
Now, about that evidence you mentioned. What is it?
Here you go.
Huh? This was... yesterday in Acro's room.
Yep, and I've included the forensic results. Take a look at it later.
Won't Miss Von Karma be mad that you're doing this? That's why this is all a secret. Huh? Look, details are on a need-to-know basis, and we're not all really allies or anything. But everything that's happened in court up until now has gone according to our plan. I don't know. Miss Von Karma didn't seem in control of things in there just now. You'll figure it out eventually, pal. Yesterday, our final plans were set into motion. Final plans? Uh-huh. That reminds me. I've got a message from the prosecutor for you. Nothing is ever truly decided until the very end. And that's it. And that's it for me too, pal. I'm out of here. What did he mean by that? The very end part? I'm not sure. It was all pretty cryptic to me. Oh, one more thing! Ha! Don't scare me like that! It looks like there's a large care package from the circus for the defendant. What? For me? It's milk. The reception area looks like some kind of dairy. Hurry up and drink it all before it spoils. An entire dairy's worth of milk? For me? So we go back to war, but I was waiting for it to say evidence has been added to your hands, but it hasn't been. So let's just check the court record as soon as we can. And the judge summons us in. Right. What's the forensics say, eh? Bat scarf stained with his blood and a small quantity of pepper. My personal theories are confirmed. Let's move on, because this is decisive evidence.
Court is now back in session. Miss Von Karma, please continue from where you left off.
I'd like to continue with Acro's testimony, starting with his relationship to the victim. I'd also like to get proof from the defense. Proof of what kind of motive Acro would have to commit this crime.
Understood. Now, Mr. Dingling.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed with your testimony.
Finally, we get to the motive. Wait, Nick, are you okay? Just do me a favor and don't ask questions you don't want the answer to. I'm not gonna gulp. She just looks like she's very moved. Like, what's going on? When we were little, we were abandoned by our parents. That's when the ringmaster of the Berry Big Circus, Russell Berry, took us in. I became an acrobat at around 9 years old. I wanted to find a way to repay the ringmaster. That was my sole purpose in life.
You're such a thoughtful young man.
As you heard, the witness deeply respected the victim. I wonder how anyone could think that Acro could kill the man he held in such esteem.
You are absolutely right. How could anyone think that, Mr. Wright? Which is why there's no real need for a cross-examination, is there?
Actually, that's the question I'm trying to answer myself. Why would Acro kill the ringmaster? Wrong place, wrong time? This might be my last chance to answer that question. Of course, I'll cross-examine or I'll just leave it. Well, if it's your last chance, of course you're going to choose that. The defense has a right to cross-examine the witness instead of just letting it go to a guilty verdict. You're so tactless, Mr. Phoenix Wright. You don't care about justice, do you? You just want to fabricate a motive.
Very well, Mr. Wright. Cross-examine the witness.
Right, let's just learn a bit more, shall we? When we were little, we were abandoned by our parents. Because even if we don't get any... Because it didn't look like there was something to press or present to. But information's never bad. Yes, my brother Sean and I.
What? You have a brother?
How old were you when this happened, Acro?
I was 8 years old and my brother was 4. Your parents were very cruel, weren't they?
Nowadays, we aren't bitter about what happened to us. Because it allowed us to meet the wonderful people at the Berry Big Circus. Nick, the judge is getting misty-eyed. He's got a soft spot for sob stories, it looks like.
Ow!
No crying in court, let's keep going.
The witness may proceed with his testimony.
That's when the ringmaster of the Berry Big Circus, Russell Berry, took us in. Well, we know that we're spiraling towards the end, so we're going to leave it for this episode. Join me next time as we just gather a little bit of information to put the final nail in the coffin. Which is never a good phrase when you're playing this game, because pretty much everyone's murdered, which is never good. Never good. See you next time for more Justice for All. Bye-bye.